Live.
All right.
We're live.
All right.
Cool. Ready?
Yeah.
Does that live mean we're live?
Yeah.
And we're live right now?
I think we're live,
Awesome.
yeah.
We are live right now.
All of that.
I'm used to like a 3, 2, 1, but we can do that right now. There we go. Okay. Welcome to That Wrestling Show. I am Mike Wendt,
I'm Liam Stryker.
and we are proud to welcome in Mike Cole.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us
About time.
here at our fireside chat
Yeah.
for WWE Payback post show.
Nice little romantic chat about wrestling.
Yeah, we heard you were coming in. We wanted to class up the joint.
Yeah, that will.
So
Mission
Payback.
accomplished.
Payback was last night.
Correct.
We all watched.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm going to jump right into it. Start the way they start. U.S. title match.
Right.
Jericho Owens. Best friends falling out of favor.
No.
See, that's why we had the fire.
I think at some point we have to blame Kevin Owens for these friendships falling apart. Mm-hmm. You know, at first it happened with Sami Zayn. Now it happened with Chris Jericho. It's a sad thing when friendship isn't forever.
But at least he replaces friendship with patriotism.
It's true.
You know?
That's true.
Gotta love a Canadian being the face of America.
It's true.
Well, that's one thing I did really enjoy about this match is, you know, Owens doing the face of American gimmick, and you would think that him being the heel that turns Jericho, he's playing the role of the face, and he's a Canadian, not even
Right.
American,
Right.
so I think that's
He's
a great
defending
irony.
the honor of, of America
He's-
from Manitoba.
Right, yes, beautiful.
We have outsourced the U.S. title is basically what's happening.
Right.
Not
Right.
too far, but
Well,
It's
you know,
fitting.
we're in the
Yeah.
process of making it the North American title. So, this
go
is a
ahead.
rematch from WrestleMania 33. And their WrestleMania 33 contest was great. It
Yes.
was a ton of fun. There was a memorable spot with Owens' finger hitting the rope, and that came into play during this match.
beautiful little callback.
It was a beautiful little callback, and something that we're going to talk about a little bit throughout the show is the psychology of all of these matches were excellent.
Fantastic in-ring psychology.
Because having Owens do that again to get out of the walls of Jericho made Jericho snap. And he attacked Owens' hand and going
It was a
after-
vicious, I mean, the hand thing was a vicious shot.
vicious.
Yeah.
Having him crush it inside the steps.
Now, it brought up a question in my head when I'm watching it. You can't pick up the steps and hit somebody. You're disqualified.
Correct.
Why is that legal?
So I asked this same question. It's because it is not a foreign object. So a foreign object is like a chair or a table that you have to set up or use.
Okay.
But because the stairs are already there, it's a part of the ring. That's why hitting somebody into the turnbuckle, like the post on the outside, isn't a disqualification. But if you pick up the steps and hit them with it, it becomes a foreign object. But if you throw them into it, that's how.
As long as you preserve the original structure, it's
Right,
allowed.
or at least try. I think all of these rules are very loose. I think
Gotcha.
we have a 30-day belt. Like, you have to defend the
All
belt
right.
within 30 days, and Brock Lesnar is going to take 90.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
We'll get there.
All right. I don't,
Now, that sends Chris Jericho to SmackDown, though.
correct, which is the weirdest choice of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Having Chris Jericho now go to SmackDown, Raw had everything to lose and nothing to gain, which is just very weird.
Yeah, and especially knowing a little bit, I cheated a little bit. I Googled Fozzie's tour dates.
Ooh.
He's on tour in 3 days.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, SmackDown's going to lose him anyway.
Chris Jericho is such a weird person because he'll work full time while also on tour. And it's very weird that he ends up having that sort of like.
So you're saying we might not lose him?
We might not lose him until after Backlash.
Now, is Kevin Owens staying on SmackDown?
I would yes.
It wasn't a trade belt for guy, no.
Which is weird, and that was one of the weird things about this entire show is that you have, you know, the weaving of the storylines and just where you're at a point where even the commentary team kind of feels jumbled with trying to, like, you know, we want to root for Chris Jericho, but we don't, because then if he wins, we lose him. It's just it was.
This is why the Superstar Shakeup should have been tonight.
Right.
It should have been tonight after this story because even when we talk about the House of Horrors match, that had so many weird changes to it because it was for the belt. It's not for the belt. Bray Wyatt's owed a rematch, but he can't because he's on Raw. And Jinder Mahal has the title because he's the #1 contender. And it's like, you know, hey, let's hit the reset button after the pay-per-view.
A lot of moving parts for a show that was really centered around, well, quite literally Payback. It's like, well, how we're, you know, this is basically a show of rematches, but at the same time we're introducing new storylines, new feuds. It's tough.
Right.
You know?
It's why, like we talked about a second ago, the in-ring psychology.
Right.
I've been saying, as we've been building up right after WrestleMania to now, the build-up for Payback has been a mess.
Right.
To put it nicely, a mess.
Yes.
But the fact that the in-ring work was so good last night, I really didn't mind everything that came before it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the pomp and circumstances that happened with WrestleMania kind of were able to be taken a step back. You take a step back and you kind of just focus on the wrestling and not the pomp and circumstance that WrestleMania has. So a lot of these matches, Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho got to take a little bit more time and told a better story than they did at WrestleMania. And then the same thing with Neville and Austin Aries.
Unbelievable in-ring psychology.
And that was awesome. That match was great. I think Neville is doing the best work of his career.
Absolutely.
When he first came up onto the main roster after debuting a couple years ago, having him where he is now is great. They'd really salvaged that career.
I mean, going from a glorified Mighty Mouse to what he is now is amazing.
Right, because he feels like such a huge deal in that division, and it doesn't feel like what the light heavyweight championship meant in the mid-2000s.
Sure. Where it was tossed between people that weren't light heavyweights.
Hornswoggle was the last one.
He retired it, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And, because it's funny to have a little person as the cruiserweight champion.
Sure.
WWE, everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think it's a good point. Just talking about Neville, like I don't know what's going to come of the cruiserweight division. I think they're still kind of working out the kinks. I haven't been crazy about it just in general. But like, if the one lasting thing out of this run of the cruiserweight division is it gets a guy like Neville back to a good spot, moving forward, I think it's largely a success. And I think so far they've been able to do that. And now just adding Aries into that mix, I think is really helped solidify that division and kind of give it a foundation they hadn't really had.
With the cruiserweights, now that they've kind of like found their groove, obviously the Cruiserweight Classic was such a huge hit last summer. 205 Live definitely kind of...
Has anybody watched it? I haven't.
I don't watch it consistently.
No.
Usually having to go from SmackDown and watching SmackDown to then having to go onto the network to watch 205 Live, it's a tough jump to ask a lot of fans to make.
I mean, out of about 11 hours of original wrestling programming a week, it's like hour 12.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like you're at a certain point. It's like how, and it's, 10 o'clock rolls around. It's like I can just change the channel or go to bed as opposed to turning on my, whatever you watch it through. And that's, you're right. That one step is very simple, but yet very daunting at the end of a full week of wrestling.
Right, because they're the characters that the Cruiserweight division is presenting. I mean, Neville and Austin Aries being two of them, and then having even more eccentric characters on there. It's a good division, and it's sad that it doesn't get the representation it should, because they're on such an island. They're on such an island on Raw, because Raw's happening, and then all of a sudden, everything purple invades. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden they're like, today, right now, this match brought to you by the Minnesota Vikings. They just get a bunch of tape and tape everything, change the lights, and it's like, I feel like we're watching. Like I changed the channel and I forgot what I'm watching.
A+ to the ring crew though, they moved their asses on that one. Can I say that?
Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah, we're live. Whatever. It's nuts watching them working there, because you have like 5 guys just like spinning tape around, going crazy. It's been to the fact, like I was watching SmackDown. I was at one SmackDown where they did that, and they didn't finish in time, and so
awesome.
they like were telling one of the superstars to like stay on the ramp.
Do a very slow intro.
I want you to get halfway down, go back up, do a dance, and come back down.
Now, the finish to the match, though, we'll talk about the match itself.
Right.
The finish to the match was fantastic. Great storytelling in the match, because like I said, I haven't watched 205 Live, so I don't really know all the build-up upside of what they show me on Raw. Right. But I didn't need it. Those two just worked so well. Like Aries is a great dance partner for Neville. Right. And they kept kind of teasing the whole the advantage of the champion. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to lose. He
doesn't have to lose, or he won't lose his title after certain circumstances. Right. If he gets counted out or disqualified,
you have to pin or submit him.
You have to pin or submit him, and that's how you win the championship. So that's ultimately how the match ultimately ended. Having Neville just kind of add to his character of he's in a submission, he's not going to get out, and just grabs the referee and just tosses him.
One of those things you always think, like, why don't they do that more often?
Right.
He's right there. Grab his hand.
Yeah, and it's going to set up something probably even better, a no disqualification match between the two, because ultimately...
Well, everything's done for a reason.
Right. You know, these things kind of come in threes, right? You have a best-of-3 series with these guys, and Neville won the first one at WrestleMania, and now you have Austin Aries, who technically won this match.
Sure.
But now you have to have the third blow-off, and so I would fully expect some sort of no disqualification stipulation.
At what's the next Raw?
The next Raw is it Great Balls of Fire? Is it Great Balls of Fire?
I knew I'd work in it at some point.
Goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire.
It is fantastically horrible of a name.
That's still happening.
I don't understand. You have all of the WCW name rights.
Yes.
You have all of the ECW name rights.
Yes.
And you decided to have this pay-per-view presented by the Big Bopper? What is happening?
Yeah.
If people don't come out in zoot suits, I'm
cheap
I'm
royalties,
out.
man.
Yeah, right.
We can get the song for cheap, pal. Let's do it. Tag team titles: the Hardys, Sheamus, and Cesaro.
This match was way better than I thought it was going to be. Going into it, you look at it, and it's baby versus baby, right? You have two protagonist teams.
Very much the sportsmanship.
It's like, we're good guys, and we're gonna do it for sportsmanship. But to have a great match, because they worked very, very well together. The Hardys being the more high-flying team, whereas Sheamus and Cesaro is far more hard-hitting and power-based.
That's Jeff Hardy's tooth.
Yeah, that's Jeff Hardy's tooth. Which, that was gnarly.
It was pretty good.
It was gnarly.
Good one.
It was funny, having watched the Celtics game earlier, and watching Isaiah Thomas lose a tooth, I was like, I think Jeff Hardy's tooth was already missing because there was no blood. I didn't see any blood, but it plays into what ended up happening after the end, at the end of the match.
Oh, so you're thinking they gimmicked the tooth?
I think they gimmicked a tooth that Jeff Hardy already didn't have.
I was going to say, it was probably a gimmick tooth to begin with.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Jeff Hardy already,
Jeff
Hardy already didn't have that tooth.
See that? They sucked me in.
Yeah.
I was so invested in the whole thing.
Because after the end of the match, Sheamus and Cesaro ended up turning on the Hardys.
Right.
And kind of. But...
How do you turn your opponent?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But then Sheamus bro kicked Matt Hardy. And after the match, after all the hoopla and the pay-per-view, Matt Hardy and Sheamus kind of had like a little bit of a Twitter war going back and forth.
Right.
And Sheamus made a comment about how like toothless and broken, the Hardys,
of
were
course.
laid out or whatever.
Sure.
And so Matt Hardy ended up like being like, you have no idea what you've unleashed. And it's like, oh, thank God. Finally, we're getting it.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Mike?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to add other than that. It was a lot better than I thought it would be, just because I didn't really particularly enjoy the build. Like, I just look at like you said, the face thing. It's just like, we get it, and it was kind of obvious what was going to happen just because they overplayed it so much. But I'm interested to see where it goes, because I think talking about how well these two teams play off each other, I think with Sheamus and Cesaro more of a grounded like you said, physical style, I think that kind of is going to benefit them as a heel moving forward. So I think this is in a better place. It's weird. Like, you look at like this feud, the Neville Aries feud, like we call this payback. It's supposed to be
right.
There's an air of finality to it. I don't think we're going to see the end of it. Yeah, right. I mean, there never is finality.
Great Balls of Fire on the horizon.
Right. Yeah, that's true. You got to we're already building Great Balls of Fire, but So like you said. It just kind of fits into the team for me tonight. I like the first half of the show a lot better than the second half, just because, like you guys said, the psychology was so good, and this kind of fit right in with it.
Now, we've talked a little bit about it on the show, but what's your take on where they're going with the Hardy Boys?
I don't see how you make this move, bringing them back without kind of unleashing the broken thing and kind of letting them I think eventually split off and do their own thing. I think Jeff. His singles run speaks for itself, and Matt, obviously, the broken character is so over. I think once they kind of get that...
Pretty much the hottest thing going right now.
Right, and you've already seen it within the first, what has it been, about a month since WrestleMania? Yeah. The pop was huge at WrestleMania. That was awesome. There's the nostalgia run that lasted about a week, and even myself, I was like, all right, I know you're here for something else. Let's kind of get into it, but it's kind of tough with.
I mean, they haven't even cut like a real promo.
Right, and I think that's got to be intentional, where they're kind of dancing around it. And if you go on like
because the second Matt starts talking,
right, and he's already starting to kind of weave it in. You can see it, and he's doing it when he comes out. He's doing the delete. The motion or whatever, so he's sprinkling it in.
That weird hand thing.
Yeah, it's all there. It's just, I think, a matter of time.
I love, again, following Matt Hardy is probably the best thing I do with my week on Twitter.
Yeah.
And he's constantly changing his name. And the best one I liked was Confused Matt Hardy. Because when you see him come out right now, he plays that up. He's doing the mannerisms from pretty much every gimmick he's ever had.
Right, yeah.
From the Team Extreme to the version 1 to the Delete, all of it in like record time. Like he was on the top rope, he did it.
Yeah.
Before he did a leg drop or whatever the hell. It was like, oh, I'm going to do version 1, and then I'm going to do the Delete, and then I'm going to jump.
Right. I am glad that WWE hasn't just like launched them into the broken thing.
Right.
Just because I would love for them to tell the story of how we get there.
Yeah.
Because obviously the TNA stuff, all the broken stuff was weaved into all of their stories. Matt Hardy blamed Jeff for the reason why he couldn't get the TNA World Title, and so without those key components, you can't tell that story.
And to their credit, there's people like myself who didn't pick up on that until Final Deletion.
Right.
You know, I mean, I saw him tweeting a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, all right, I might want to turn on TNA this week. And it was at that point.
Right.
Because it was everybody was talking about. I didn't see their build-up, so I would love to see the story play out.
Right, and, you know, even if this is kind of, you know, that bro kick to the head, years ago, Sheamus, that was his whole thing, where that kick is so devastating, and it, you know, he couldn't use it because legally, and they brought in David Otunga to talk about how, like, legally he couldn't use the brogue kick because it caused such bad concussions and stuff. So you kind of play up that a little bit, and
they had a gimmick based on concussions.
Yeah, because concussions.
Because
it's 2017. We gotta talk about the real hard issues.
Absolutely.
With our fake fighting.
And thank you. Women's title: Hometown Girl versus Alexa Bliss.
Yeah.
Mike?
What else is new? The hometown star loses at home. I mean, it's
WWE.
It's so predictable. It's predictable that I was actually surprised. I thought that if they're ever going to change that trend, that recent trend, we saw it here in Boston with Sasha Banks losing. If they're going to change it, it was going to be for Bayley, because she's the one that kind of got built up as geez, how many times do I have to hear about her and her father be sitting in the last row in the SAP Center in San Jose or wherever? Right. So I was kind of surprised, but again, I like that they've kind of strapped the rocket to Alexa. I think she's brought, you can say what you want about her ring work, but I think she's kind of brought a freshness to that whole division. And now moving her over to Raw, I think there's endless opportunities here. So I like where they're kind of going to get her started. I mean, obviously putting the belt on her right away, I think is something that I can get behind. Definitely.
Yeah, my favorite part of the shakeup was swapping her and Charlotte.
Right, it makes a lot of sense.
Keeping them on separate shows. Basically creates the same thing you did at the first brand split with Cena and Orton.
Right.
Because on one show you have this one dominant star, on the other you have another, and they're going to rack up comparable resumes.
Right.
And based on those comparable resumes, eventually they're going to clash. So it's not going to be WrestleMania 34, might not even be WrestleMania 35, but somewhere down the line, these two women in Charlotte and Alexa Bliss are going to have comparable resumes, and that clash at a WrestleMania for a top title, a unification of those two titles, whatever ends up happening, is going to be something special to watch, because Alexa Bliss has taken her character shift from being basically just like a little girl that likes fairies and pixie dust to being one of the best heels that WWE is offering. Yeah. And it's been fantastic to watch. I also love, this was probably the first match out of all of them where the match didn't end with that person's finish. It played into the psychology thing again, where Alexa pushed her into the ring post, she hit her head on the ring post, so now she's knocked loopy. So she DDTs her in the middle of the ring and covers her. And Alexa Bliss's finish isn't a DDT, and so to kind of watch that, her finish doesn't necessarily have to finish somebody, she doesn't need to use it as a great thing, because we've gotten into that trope where it's like, your finisher has to knock out the person to beat somebody, and it was refreshing. And there was another match later on that we're going to get to, where this person, one, doesn't have one at the moment, but also didn't need it to. He just kind of caught him. It's wrestling in and of itself is just, I got to pin you for 3 seconds. It doesn't matter how I do it. It's not boxing. I don't have to knock you out.
And again, it goes back to the in-ring psychology. It's a throwback to, when's the last time you saw a title change with a roll-up?
Right.
You know, or a back body drop.
Right.
You know, come on, let's get an abdominal stretch going.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Get him with a sleeper hold. He lifts the hands and it goes down for the 3.
And I find her absolutely refreshing.
Yes.
The switching, you're right on the Charlotte thing. And it's like, who are they going to put her with going forward, though?
Right. I think that...
Because that's the next step. You can't just keep going her and Bayley, because that's easy.
That is easy.
You know, Bayley is the perpetual babyface.
It seems that the WWE wants to keep Sasha Banks as a protagonist. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want to use the term like babyface because she's not necessarily a good person, but kind of like a protagonist.
Sure.
Right? Like, she's kind of in that, like, anti-hero sort of role.
Sure.
I think that's obviously what's next after we, finish up with Bayley. Mm-hmm. But after that, I want to see Alexa Bliss take on Nia Jax. Because...
You know what? Yeah.
Because Nia Jax is presented as the same as the Big Show, right? Mm-hmm. As this huge tree that all of these women have to chop down. And Alexa Bliss is the smallest of all of these women. Right. But she's also just like, a vicious little chihuahua that's just going to keep biting your ankles. And so eventually she's going to take her down, and I want to see that.
Relentless.
Is that going to be the women's pay-per-view?
Hashtag. Relentless.
Yeah.
And here's a match. Now, speaking of the build-up to Payback, this one I forgot was even on the card until like 2 days ago.
Right.
Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe.
I forgot it was on the show. Right. Watching the show.
Like, I was literally writing this out, and I'm like, really? We're going to have that match? And it's a great match.
Right.
I was more than welcome to watch it. But I'm like, where's the build-up for that? Oh, that's right. He did a thing 5 months ago.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate that this match wasn't able to be on the road to WrestleMania like it was supposed to be. Unfortunately, Seth Rollins gets hurt, so he isn't able to wrestle Samoa Joe at Fastlane. Seriously, you got to get off the bus. It's the end of the line. And so because he wasn't able to do that and had to skip right to Triple H, we had to kind of water down and convolute this.
You had to blow that off.
But with two people that have worked together for years at this point and know each other so well, having worked in Ring of Honor, it was a match everybody wanted to see, and I'm glad it happened.
And it was a great match.
It was.
Yeah, it was not a whole lot to that. It was a good match. That I think that the point about it being, we all saw where this was going, and the injury really just kind of threw a whole wrench into that. And then that, for me, kind of took away from the anticipation or whatever you want to say about going into this match. I didn't really, I watched it last night just knowing I was going to watch a good wrestling match, one that I didn't really have a whole lot of investment in whatsoever. So for that, it was good. I'm excited to see where they go with these two moving forward. I think that's one of the more interesting things, even going into Monday night, where now these guys kind of have to springboard off into different directions, I would imagine, or maybe they stick with them. But so I think that's the more interesting thing, is just to see where this goes from here.
Right. We like to have hot takes on this show, and this comes up to my hot take of this show.
Okay.
I think that we are leading towards a Shield reunion. I think that Samoa Joe is going to form some sort of three-man team. I thought Kevin Owens was going to be a part of it, so I don't know who is going to join him. Probably Braun Strowman. But we're going... The biggest part of the shakeup and the reason for the shakeup was to get Dean Ambrose on Raw. There was a moment
later in the show that we'll get to that I absolutely thought the same thing.
That's what I believe. Yeah. I wholeheartedly believe that the shakeup, while putting Charlotte and Alexa Bliss on opposite shows is nice, and adding The Miz over onto Raw is nice, and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and now Chris Jericho onto SmackDown. Those are all nice. I think that the reason why we did it is the convention was to get Dean Ambrose on to Raw, because I think Samoa Joe, Braun Strowman, and an undetermined third person is going to be this three-man team that the Shield is going to have to come together to take out.
Sure.
And I think it's going to fall very flat.
Probably a Great Balls of Fire.
Just
to work in the fact that we have a fireplace.
Yes.
I guess my takeaway from the match is Samoa Joe needs to update his ring gear.
Yeah.
I should have thought the same thing.
I mean, I look at Kevin Owens as a model. It's like they're kind of similar where they got, they came from the Indies or wherever, and it's like they're wearing the same thing. But at least Kevin Owens, kind of, he gimmicked up his shorts and T-shirt look. It's like...
Right. Yeah, Samoa Joe...
I don't want to be the fashion police on this show, but I have to be for a second.
No, but we love Tyler Breeze.
Especially when especially when you're looking at Seth Rollins, who's all gimmicked up, and it's like...
Yeah, I think that's going to come with whatever... Like, he should have the words "Destroyer" on him somewhere.
Yeah.
That's his moniker. So
I mean, I get it. You're a fighter, but even Taz updated his ring gear when he got to WWE.
Right. Yeah. I think. I don't know if you ever saw his gear towards the end of TNA, but it looked far
Joe
more,
or Taz?
Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
I think it was a biker vest or something.
It was aces and eights. It was really bad.
Okay.
Sons of Anarchy beat
I did
the
not.
NWO.
Yeah.
But Samoa Joe, his gear was far closer to like a gladiator skirt.
Oh, well, we don't want to go that route.
Yeah.
You know, they tried it with Ron Simmons. It didn't work.
Yeah, no. And he had that like He-Man helmet.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
And Sonny as his manager.
Oh, yeah. She's doing good things now, huh?
Awesome.
Kids don't
Speaking
look
of
her
being
up.
on the internet live, let's get to the House of Horrors match. Probably the most polarizing match of the night because, first of all, going into it, all we had was
this is going to happen.
Was rumors, expectations, and theories, but we didn't know what the hell was going to go on with this.
Yeah.
When it happened, I'm going to go to Mike first.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction when it finally happened?
I didn't like it. I think there's suspend disbelief, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a little too campy. Like we cut away and it's the music starts playing and it's like I get where you're going and it's for some people, maybe not for me. Maybe that's
sure.
Be a little bit more open minded on my part, but just. You see the limo coming down. He's in the back of the limo, shirtless. He gets out. There's a tractor. And as I'm saying this to and even just with other people in the room right now who don't really watch it, must be like, what the hell is he talking about?
And the tractor was rolling backwards.
Tractor rolling backwards.
Yeah.
It's still going somewhere in the middle of Missouri by itself.
We were in San Jose.
Yeah,
right.
It's just I don't know. Maybe I just didn't go into it with as open mind as I should, but it fell a little flat and almost too campy for me, almost too over the top. I don't know. It wasn't. I didn't find it necessarily entertaining in terms of the fight. I don't think you put two guys in that situation is probably not going to be the most entertaining thing. So, I mean, the guy got a refrigerator shoved on him. That was cool, I guess. But other than that, I don't know. It
was the dirtiest. It was the dirtiest refrigerator I've ever seen.
Dude, Bray Wyatt needs a cleaning woman.
Yeah,
there was so much stuff smeared all over that walls. I was worried about the health code.
Right.
It was gross.
It was very funny that he had a frying pan and hit Randy Orton with a frying pan, but I'm so sad it didn't make like a bong sound effect. Yeah. I'm very sad.
I love the fact you brought up he was in a limo shirtless because. Yeah. I loved it, first of all. I loved it, and I love the fact that, as we were talking before we started the show, this is the second pay-per-view in a row that we've called the goofiest prediction ever. Yeah. WrestleMania was Mojo.
Yes.
We were like, hashtag Mojo Mania is happening. Again, not thinking it's really going to, because it was bronze match.
We also called Gronk.
We called Gronk. We basically planned out the thing a month before. This was another one. Because we said on the show, I'm like, I want him to go and do production. I want it to be House of 1,000 Corpses.
Yeah, right.
And it was a WWE version of that kind of.
Right.
But if I had to take away, if I had to nitpick a negative out of it, it was their transportation to and from the House of Horrors.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was why not go with if you're going to go this route, you're going to go camp. Have Bray have like a dirty convertible that he's driving with the thing open, he's singing on his way back. And shirtless in a limo. I'm like, that was the first image you saw, and I'm like, this is gonna be, because you couldn't see right away if he had pants on, and I originally thought, I'm like, is he really in his jocks? Yeah. Is he really in his ring gear, which is his little tidy jocks? And I'm like, this is gonna be really weird. Luckily, he was wearing pants.
Right. Luckily, he was wearing jeans.
Jeans and just normal boots, which I thought. The dirtiness of it, I dug for the thing. I'm glad they weren't in ring gear.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And for the fight that they were having, I loved that they didn't have commentary.
Right.
Loved the fact that it wasn't going to be like, what's happening? What's this? Because it just would have been that. And I loved you could hear them kind of trash talking each other, and Bray's just spouting off weirdness.
Nonsense.
I absolutely loved it. I wasn't huge fan of the fact that it went back to the arena.
Yeah. That's, I think, the big thing for me, too.
But I also understand because they had to move forward with the Jinder Mahal thing.
It makes sense,
you know.
So I'm going to say this right to the camera. Look, it wasn't good. I enjoyed it. That being said, I really think that the issue was they didn't lean all the way in.
Yeah,
they could have gone more camp.
They should have went balls to the wall, as far push that envelope as far as possible. They should have You know, like, they started to do it with, like, the tractor. The tractor is, like, supernaturally getting dragged, you know, but there weren't any, like, cult members. The whole thing of Bray Wyatt is a cult leader.
Well, I think the whole thing of Bray Wyatt at this point is he's the worst cult leader. Nobody follows him.
Right.
He's like, he's Kip Jordy from South Park. He literally has no Facebook friends.
Right, he's got none. Zero.
But he's diligent in trying to be.
He's trying. But we're presented as, like, this guy has a really well-built cult.
Somewhere.
Right? Somewhere. And so I would assume that this was supposed to be in, like, a swamp in Louisiana, and there should have been cult members that were, like, attacking him, or, like, there should have been, like, a weird woman, like, in a rocking chair, in a goat mask, or a sheep mask, like, in the corner of one of the rooms.
Right.
And then, you know, like you guys said, driving the limo back to the arena was dumb. You at least in kayfabe and storyline wise have convinced me that Bray Wyatt is supernatural and spooky and magic, right? So you should have done a gimmick where he opens a door, pushes Randy Orton through, and now all of a sudden we're in the arena because he's lights out magic guy.
Right. Or Narnia.
Yeah, right. Or Narnia. The thing that I probably hated the most was Bray drops a fridge on him, right? Then proceeds, which the whole thing looked like an episode of Cops. I don't know if either of you.
Point,
when Bray Wyatt showed up and they showed him and he's like in his like blood butcher apron, I'm like, yeah, okay, natural Bray Wyatt like apron blood stuff. But then he actually started attacking him and he was in a white wife beater, right? That is what he was in. I was like, oh my god, this turned into an episode of Cops.
Well, I mean, he's just hanging out at home.
Right, he's hanging out at home.
This is his house.
But then he gets in the limo and drives back to the arena, and then it was lights out Magic Orton. And that's the part that I didn't like. Because Randy Orton in no way has ever been a supernatural character, right? Like, if he was battling Kane is a lights out magic guy, right? The lights go out, they come back on, and he's there, right? Him, The Undertaker, Mankind, Sting, those people are lights out magic guys. Right. And Bray Wyatt is one of them. Randy Orton has never been. He's heard voices, but apparently he's seen a psychiatrist, but hasn't found a new band.
But as the commentators said throughout the in-ring portion and throughout the night, Randy Orton infiltrated the Wyatt family. Right, so he learned the ways of the Force.
So like that.
He's not quite a Jedi yet.
Yeah,
but he knows how to, lift rocks.
Right. Got some of it. It rubs off. I do think I think it's awesome that we just sit here for the last 5 minutes talking about like the insanity of this match and talking about all the weird things that happen inside the house. And the one bone we have to pick is the limo ride. Right. We're talking about. Right. I'm cool with all the other supernatural stuff. Yeah,
I think that means that they succeeded.
It makes sense. I
think the internet and the wrestling community on the internet tends to just be so instant reactionary to things in such a negative way that immediately it wasn't what they expected, so it was bad.
I think that's why I enjoyed it, because immediately it's exactly what I expected.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know what the expectation would be and how that doesn't fall in line.
Like I almost texted you, I'm like, we called another one.
Right. I had two versions of this match in my head, right? I had the one we got, and I had another one which was like in the ring, and there was like...
Well, like we said, Punjabi prison.
Right, it was the Kennel from Hell match, right? Where it's like a Hell in a Cell, and then inside on the ring is another cage, and then there's weird... like people or
spooky stuff happening,
but in the thing. You know what I mean? And that's what
the WrestleMania match, basically.
Right. There would Bray Wyatt learned how to use Adobe and Photoshop.
Right. The thing to look forward to, I guess, would be the fact that Bray Wyatt. This overall seems like a success.
Right.
They took the chance to do a match like this.
Yeah.
Bray Wyatt's on Raw.
Yes.
And there is another guy with a teleporting drone that's on Raw as well.
Right. And there's a demon.
So there's something to look forward to.
There's a bunch of spooky magic people on Raw. So
it's going to get weird.
It's going to get weird. And sometimes weird is fun.
Sometimes weird is... There is a demon, I was thinking... I'm like, where's Kane? Finn Balor.
And Kane.
Well, he's running for governor of some such thing. I don't know. He's corporate now.
Yeah, he's far more corporate. He's hung up his spooky mask. He only uses it when people are really mad.
All right, so let's get to, I guess, the main event.
Okay.
If you want to call this match a main event. It was the one that went on last.
Yes.
I always feel that the most important title should be the main event, but I'm old school. What are you going to do? Roman Reigns, Braun Strowman. If there was ever a revenge angle, or, Payback, they kept using the word revenge. I'm like, you have a branded show called Payback. It's a word that's valid to use in every one of these situations.
Right.
It's like they wanted to use revenge, but it just seems like too much violence of a word to use.
Right.
Doesn't look as good on a hashtag.
No, hashtag revenge.
Right.
People then start saying of the nerds. It's not good.
See, that would be perfect with Braun.
Yeah.
He is ogre.
Right. Right. I want a T-shirt for Braun Strowman that is just him flexing, and then it just says, "I'm not done with you yet." Because he said that after Roman Reigns was in the ambulance.
Those are the things of nightmares right now.
Right. He throws him into the ambulance, comes out of nowhere. "I'm not done with you yet." And then the main event happened.
Yeah.
Where Braun Strowman, they're doing everything right with. They are knocking him out of the park. This is the type of booking that Brock Lesnar got circa 2002.
Right.
Right? Where it's just like, hey, man, here's a rocket ship. Hold on, we're going to the moon, all right? Just hang on tight.
Sure.
And he's crushing this character. He is probably the best part of Raw, if not the best part of WWE's product. And
Bold statement.
Bold statement. He is awesome, and to watch him do what he did to Roman Reigns leading up helps Roman Reigns and all of his detractors because he is becoming a little bit more human.
Yeah.
And that's something that people need to see. People need to see Roman Reigns get beat up a lot.
Right.
Because that's how, when we watch him main event a 4th straight WrestleMania, it's a little bit easier to swallow. And this match was no exception.
No.
Yeah.
Watching him get destroyed.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
That was my big takeaway from it, is how they handled, not necessarily how they handled Strowman, but how they handled Reigns in the match and after. I think, finally showing some vulnerability for this guy, who I think my biggest issue with him is I'm just so tired of Super Reigns, and I just, how it comes out of nowhere. To knock him down a few pegs just to build him back up, I think that's your only chance with this guy, to build him up as your top babyface. And I'm still not entirely sure if I'll be able to buy into it. I don't think it's going to be realistic enough for me, but it's, that vulnerability is really important. And when you're beating the hell out of this guy to the point where he's internally bleeding, coughing up blood, struggling just to get out of the arena, and he's doing it on his own terms and refusing care. Like, if this isn't going to make the guy human, then nothing will. Right. So they're at a point where I think they kind of really have to invest in that. I think that is, and to do that while also pushing Strowman even further, I think kind of satisfies both needs. Right, because both guys won. Both guys won at the end of this show because Braun looks like an unstoppable monster, which is exactly what he should be. Right. And Roman Reigns looks more human. My biggest issue with Roman Reigns is that I love 90% of his matches. Yep. Right. 90% of his matches are excellent. It's that final 10% where, and I always go back to Hell in a Cell last year where he fought Rusev in a Hell in a Cell. Rusev has him with a chain in his mouth in Rusev's finish, and Roman Reigns somehow gets out and gives him a spear and pins him and wins. It's like, that's the part that's frustrating to fans, and I don't think the fan community has been able to necessarily pinpoint something, but that's what it is for me, and when I talk to people, that seems to be what it is. And for him to take that beating and then not get up at the end. That was the thing. He got his ass kicked last night, and I still expected him to win that match. And that didn't happen as progress.
And he also didn't kick out of that first false finish at the end. He just threw up his arm, and it was just like, oh, no, you were done, man. You were cooked.
The funny thing is that you mentioned the internal injuries, which I love that one all the time. You didn't need the blood coming out of him because the steps thing. I watched it. I'm like, it hits his chest. I'm like, damn. Yeah. Like that hurt me from my couch. Yeah. It was beastly, the beatdown he gave him. And then of course after the show goes off the air, he's because he's a man, walking himself into an ambulance. Yeah. It's like, dude, I'd take a chair.
Yeah, I mean, get a computer chair.
But again, Braun knocks a door off an ambulance.
The dude just...
on the post-show.
You just hear, again, I'm not done with you yet, and then runs through an ambulance door.
Yeah, these are the things I get nightmares about.
Yeah,
just hearing a jacked up Braun screaming, I'm not done with you yet.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Yeah. That is the stuff nightmares are made of.
Anyway, final thoughts on Payback.
I thought it was a great show. I thought it was phenomenal for the build. Because building up to this, it was a mess.
It was almost not a build.
There wasn't a build. The shakeup kind of took front and center. You had that WrestleMania hangover, and usually this pay-per-view is not good because it's just a bunch of rematches. Right. They made the most out of this, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Mike?
Yeah, far exceeded my expectations for the same reasons you mentioned. Not a whole lot of a build. I thought it was pretty weak. And I thought that just with the psychology was fantastic. It was like, especially the first hour or two of that show was just so like, I can see where this is going when it kind of plays out without you really realizing what's going on, and then you put it all together at the end, and it just makes so much sense. That's when I think wrestling's at its best. I mentioned my namesake, Michael Cole, and I thought the entire commentary team, I thought they did a pretty good job.
We didn't bring that up.
I know, I kind of snuck that in.
I was thinking that last time. I'm like, you know what? And I'm not a fan of Cole. I'm not a fan of Booker T either as commentary. I had no problems. But even Booker, I'm like, he's doing a great job tonight.
Right, and my fiance has discussed it. She watches it with me, and neither of us are big Booker fans, but even since he's been back, it's been relatively understated, not too over the top.
David O'Connor can go make that movie, man. Forever.
And I thought they were great. They didn't hit you over the head with like the kind of selling, like I thought, especially in the women's match with Bayley, when she hit her head, like Cole was yelling as the match was finished, just kind of remind you. I thought everything just fit really well, more so than I expected. So
yeah, I also love Corey Graves.
Corey Graves.
That's why I didn't bring him up.
That's a big reason I think Booker is more acceptable for me this time around, because I think he plays better with Corey than he did with JBL. So.
Yeah, well,
who doesn't?
JBL.
They played well off each other, I felt, and what stuck out for me with Booker T was, he was getting like aggressive. He was like almost getting angry. It wasn't his usual catchphrasey stuff. It was, no, I'm a Hall of Famer, a multi-time champion, and this is why this is illegal. Right. You know what I mean? He was actually like giving insight, but in a passionate way that I can't remember hearing from him.
Yeah, Booker T does have a wealth of knowledge, and it's better and more refreshing when you watch these legends and heels actually talk about why these things are happening and kind of adding to the ring psychology, because it tells a more complete story.
Without a 1942 reference.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Moving forward before we get to Backlash, moving forward with this, I feel it was the only mentionable part about the pre-show was the fact that Finn Balor actually did challenge Brock Lesnar for a future title match.
Yes.
Which goes against almost everything we got building up to it.
Yeah.
Like we were saying right after WrestleMania, Finn Balor versus Brock seems like it makes sense. Beast, Demon, it makes sense. And then they kind of pivoted, and Braun was going up against Brock, and Balor was somewhere else, and now it's like, okay, let's do it.
Right, and you have Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar on a destined collision course as the two people that ever beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Right. And so you have that, and it's like, well...
But you got a year for that.
Yeah, but I don't want Finn Balor versus Brock Lesnar to be a placeholder, right? I don't want this to be the SummerSlam match main event because we have to do it. I want Finn Balor to have a
Great Balls of Fire main event.
I want to have a Great Balls of Fire main event because it will be, goodness gracious, Great Balls of Fire.
You're going to have so much fun with that.
So much fun with that. But I just want him to actually have a shot at beating Brock Lesnar for that championship. And I feel like until Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar finish up their, like, I beat The Undertaker. Right. I'm better because I beat The Undertaker.
Sure.
As soon as they figure that out, we will have a legitimate opportunity for Finn Balor to beat Brock. But until then, I want to keep them as far away from each other as possible.
Yeah, just a seed planted. It's just, I think, I'm with you. I think it's just kind of keep them apart until they kind of crash.
So next pay-per-view, May 21st, Backlash, or as it seems to be promoted, the Shinsuke Nakamura show.
Yeah, the Shinsuke Nakamura
That
experience.
was tough to get out, by the way. Thoughts?
I'm excited.
We got Jinder and Randy.
Yep. And I think Jinder's going to win.
It seems to be heading in that direction.
It feels like obviously WWE kind of builds to their big shows. SummerSlam is the next big show. It feels like Jinder Mahal versus Mojo Rawley for the WWE Championship.
Oh, I'd love it.
Feels like what we're doing.
Gronk takes both the Bollywood boys and throws them in his backpack.
Right.
Come on.
Right. It feels like that's what we're doing.
Sure.
Which is insane.
Now, okay, just to clarify for my own sake, they've been calling them on SmackDown the Bollywood Boys, but they call them something else, something
the
Brothers.
Singh Brothers. So the Bollywood Boys is their tag team name.
I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, so they were in the Cruiserweight Classic.
Okay.
They've been on 205 Live. So they're a tag team from India, and they're brothers.
Okay.
And they're the Bollywood Boys. Mm-hmm. So they do a lot of dancing. They're very colorful, bright Bollywood, musical dance, blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
Their real name is something Singh, but they're the Singh brothers. And so I think they're trying to legitimize them in a heel stable.
So kind of like the Colognes?
Yeah, kind of like the Colognes, where it's just like...
Don't mention the Shining Stars?
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the Shining Stars.
We had a failed travel agency, and we're just going to move on from that?
Yeah, well, eventually nobody went to their timeshares. No one bought them.
It happens.
It's really sad.
All right. Well, I thank you for clarifying that with me. Thoughts on Jinder and Randy?
I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm not predicting a Jinder win. I just... I think Jinder gets hindered, and I think it's just one of those things where you got to have somebody. It's a placeholder, I think, and it's just one of those things where you have feuds over the course of a year that kind of happen, and you move on. I just, I don't know.
The only thing that really sticks out is WWE has moved into India.
That is a good point. Right?
Stephanie did a huge push this past weekend.
Yeah,
they've got a new show coming out too.
Right,
yeah.
And so because India is such a huge market for them. Even if he's the champion for the summer and never holds it again,
they're going to give it to him till SummerSlam.
They give it to him for that time period while there's a launch and relatable faces.
You're going to lose them all when Mojo takes it from him.
Oh, I know.
All those viewers.
I know, because Mojo Rawley gets hyped and he stays hyped.
Absolutely.
So hopefully he becomes the champ. It stays the champ.
Wow, we are dragging it right to the end, aren't we?
Yeah.
Nakamura, is he going up against?
Proud of that one.
Is he going up against Ziggler? Nakamura?
I would assume so.
Okay.
Which will be fun. It'll be a ton of fun. Hopefully, he breaks Ziggler's jaw. I like when he does that.
Yeah, it's got to be just a big spot fest for him, where it's gonna
showcase him for the main audience.
It makes sense.
Right, for a lot of people, because you have to assume that most of your audience doesn't watch NXT,
and he doesn't need help looking good, but Ziggler will. Certainly help that.
If you need somebody to take a loss and make the other guy look good, go to Ziggler.
Right. Yeah. Classic WWE stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Anything else, guys?
No.
Did we cover it all?
I think we covered it all.
Awesome. Thank you guys for checking out That Wrestling Show. I am Mike Wendt.
I'm Liam Stryker.
And thank Mike.